peritoneum. Today we will do the peritoneal spaces. So till now we have made the vertical tracing of the peritoneum. So whenever a question comes, draw and label the vertical tracing of the peritoneum, you have to make this diagram as such. The liver with the lesser omentum and the arrow in the foramen of Winslow, through which we can go into the lesser sac. So this is how you show the arrow from greater sac to the lesser sac added in this diagram. So this is the most correct diagram of the, whenever a question of the lesser sac comes or vertical tracing, then you have to make this diagram. And another, you have to understand the anterior-posterior view of this. In order to understand the peritoneal spaces, the another diagram which is very important is the horizontal tracing of the peritoneum. Horizontal tracing, it is a bit difficult to draw and understand, rather than vertical is more easier way. So again we have to make the same diagram, that is the figure of 8. Abdominal cavity with subpubic angle, the lower limb, level of umbilicus. So horizontal tracing is drawn after the removal of the movable organs. As we have fixed all the movable organs with the help of the magic membrane, that is the peritoneum, on the same basis we have to make the horizontal tracing. For that we will remove one by one the organs. First we will remove the, which organ we have fixed? First of all, liver. So we will remove the liver. For example, if you want to remove the liver from the abdominal cavity, we have to cut certain things. Liver is surrounded by the visceral peritoneum. It is hanging from the diaphragm. So first we will cut these two layers. What is this? Bare area of the liver. You make this diagram in full page, everybody. This is the most correct diagram of the lesser sac as well as of the vertical tracing. So this is the bare area of the liver, where the liver is touching the diaphragm directly. There is no intervening peritoneum. That's why it's called bare area of the liver. And from here it has got 2 points, upper and lower. On the upper point, the diaphragmatic peritoneum is reflected on the liver as the visceral peritoneum. Similarly, below, the diaphragmatic peritoneum is reflected on the liver as the visceral peritoneum, that is Gleason's capsule. So this gap is the bare area. So, and where it lies? On the posterior surface of the liver. It will be more clear when we will do the liver. At present you must know that it is reflected above and below on the posterior surface of the liver. On the superior part, it is called the superior coronary ligament. Superior coronary ligament. And this lower one, this fold is called the inferior coronary ligament. So the superior and the inferior coronary ligaments, actually they are the part of the right triangular ligament. The areas from where the bare area of the liver is not small, it is a very large area on the posterior surface of the liver, and right and left liver. There are two lobes, right and left lobes of the liver. So the peritoneum is reflected from the posterior surface of both the right as well as the left lobe. Right lobe is big. So these two folds where they are reflected is called the right and left triangular. As you have done the lung, and you know what is the pulmonary ligament, if you remember. What was the definition of the pulmonary ligament? It was the area of the hilum of the lung from where the parietal pleura becoming visceral pleura, inferiorly. Same is here. So these two represent where the diaphragmatic peritoneum becoming the visceral peritoneum or vice versa. So this is the clear. So first we have to cut these two ligaments. Why they are called coronary? What is the meaning of why the coronary arteries are coronary? Crown-like. So it is also crown-like. So we have to cut number one, superior and inferior coronary ligament, or right and left triangular ligament. That is the attachment between the diaphragmatic peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum. Second thing, we have to cut the lesser omentum, where this point is called porta hepatis. If we cut only this, then the stomach will be also dragged out. So we have to separate the stomach with the greater omentum, so we have to cut. Second cut is here. We have to cut the lesser omentum around the porta hepatis. Third, we have to cut the falciform ligament also, because falciform ligament is attaching the umbilicus with the liver. So these three ligaments when we cut, then we can put the liver in the tray, and actually we will doing in the D hall. We are removing one by one all the movable organs. First we have removed the liver. So after the removal of the liver, what is the position of the abdominal cavity? This is the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm. This is the sagittal section, and this is the section of the abdomen. Coronal or horizontal. If the patient is lying, if we are making like this, this is the horizontal or coronal section. So liver lies below the right dome of the diaphragm and a little bit on the midline cross on the left lobe. Right lobe is big. And this is the parietal peritoneum. This is the diaphragmatic peritoneum. This is the falciform ligament, two folds. This is again the diaphragmatic peritoneum. This is again the retroperitoneum. This is the pelvic peritoneum. Anterior-posterior. So this is the falciform ligament, and below here is the ligamentum teres with obliterated left umbilical vein. So this is the liver after we have removed and we cut this falciform ligament from here. And we have removed the liver out of it. So when you remove the liver, and this is the falciform ligament, along with the liver we remove it. When you remove the liver, what is left behind? This is the, you have to understand what is the meaning of this diagram. These two our fold represent the falciform ligament. This is the superior coronary ligament. This is the inferior coronary ligament. When you join, this is the right triangular ligament. 3 angles. 1, 2, 3. Triangular. This is the left triangular ligament. 3 angles. 1, 2, 3 angles. So left triangular ligament, this is right. Right is bigger, well defined, having the superior and the inferior coronary parts. Coronary means it is cap-like, crown-like. If you see, this is the crown. That's why it's called coronary ligaments of the right triangular ligament. Left is not having any mark because it is very thin and linear. So we only say this is left triangular ligament. This represents the falciform ligament. Sorry, the porta hepatis. from where we have cut the porta hepatis. And porta hepatis contains portal triad, portal vein, common bile duct on right side, and hepatic artery proper on left side. So this is the diagram. Now second thing we have to remove is the movable organ we have fixed is the stomach. If you want to remove the stomach from the abdominal cavity, see where you will cut. Where you will cut, first of all, number 1, gastroesophageal junction. We have to cut the esophagus at the cardiac end. Then we will cut the stomach, number 1 layer going to the spleen. Now number 1 layer which is covering the liver, covering the lesser omentum, covering the anterior surface of the stomach, goes to the spleen, because spleen lies on the left side of the stomach, and below the spleen is touched by left kidney also. So kidney also lies behind the stomach. So this number 1 layer also goes on the left side and touches the spleen, and number 2 also goes to the spleen. So these 2 layers of the peritoneum going towards the spleen from the stomach is called the gastrosplenic ligament. This one. This is the gastrosplenic ligament. Then these 2 layers together, now will they go towards the posterior abdominal wall, towards the left kidney. So from spleen to the kidney, this double fold is again called the ligament. Now its name is lino-renal ligament. Lino means spleen. Lino-renal ligament. So this is the lateral extension of the number 1 and number 2 layers. The vertical number 1, number 2 layers form the greater omentum. This is the left extension or the lateral extension, forming 2 ligaments, gastrosplenic and lino-renal ligament. So number 1 layer also touches here to the diaphragm in front of the stomach. Number 2 layer behind the stomach also goes towards the diaphragm, but it is reflected back as the diaphragmatic peritoneum, and anteriorly also it is reflected as the diaphragmatic peritoneum. So a small area of the fundus posteriorly remains without peritoneum. That is also called bare area of the stomach. The fundus only. Bare area of the stomach. Anteriorly it is fully covered by number 1 layer of the peritoneum, but posteriorly it is deficient because it goes down behind the only fundus part of the stomach. Then, so one cut is, we will cut the gastrosplenic ligament, then the stomach will be free. Number 1, the esophagus we will cut. Number 2, gastrosplenic ligament. And number 3 cut. Number 3 and number 4 layer from the pancreas to free the greater omentum, because greater omentum is also attached to the stomach. We want to remove the stomach. So we have to cut number 3 and number 4 layers. And then 4th cut, we have to cut the pylorus also, because pylorus is continuous with the duodenum. So this junction is also we have to cut. Then we have to cut the lesser omentum also, here also. Then the stomach will be out. So this much we have to cut to remove the stomach. So after the removal of the stomach, what is the picture left? Here we cut the stomach, esophagus. The peritoneum is also cut. Here we cut the from esophagus, then we cut the gastrosplenic ligament. So this is number 1, number 2 layer of the gastrosplenic ligament. Then we have to cut the number 3 and number 4 layers in front of pancreas. This is how you show the cut end of. Then we have to cut the gastroduodenal junction. This is the gastroduodenal. Here we cut the duodenum. So this is how to understand this diagram. Horizontal tracing or the vertical. So this whole space is the lesser sac. This is the lesser sac. This is the foramen of Winslow, epiploic foramen from greater sac. Whenever a question of the lesser sac comes, you have to make this diagram also, vertical tracing as well as the horizontal. No doubt it is very difficult to make. Who will make this diagram will get the bonus marks, because this is very difficult diagram to sketch. Having a lot of practice, then only anybody can make this diagram correctly. Then duodenum is retroperitoneal. And also the pancreas. Then we want to remove the movable 6 meter long jejunum and ileum. In order to remove the jejunum ileum, where you will cut? See, number 1, where the jejunum start. This is called the jejunum junction. You will cut number 1 cut here. Number 2 cut, you have to cut the root of the 6 meter long jejunum and ileum mesentery. And if you make the root of the, because the jejunum start on the left side of the midline, where the duodenum ends. Duodenum ends on the left side of the midline. And where this 6 meter long jejunum ileum ends? Right iliac fossa, where the appendix is lying. This is called terminal ileum, where it lies on the right side below. If you measure from this point to this point, here lies the root of the mesentery. And if you measure, it is only your small scale. Means this is the root. If you cut like this here, mesentery. This is the mesentery. This is the small intestine. That is the jejunum and ileum. So this is the mesentery. So when you measure it, it is only 6 inches long. Small scale. That's why it's called the magic membrane, the peritoneum. 6 inches long root of the mesentery is holding how many inches? 6 meters. So that you have to remove. Then third cut, you have to cut the terminal ileum. Then your 6 meter jejunum ileum is out. And what is the left behind? How you show? Is it clear? So this diagram should be very clear. Do you know jejunal junction we cut? This is the terminal ileum. When you cut, this is how you show the cut end. So this is the root of the mesentery, 6 inches long. Then cecum and ascending colon is not movable, so it remains on this side. Then transverse colon. So transverse colon, if we want to remove, because it was also movable. Remove the transverse colon. Number 1, you cut the hepatic flexure. Number 2, you cut the splenic flexure. Then you have to cut the root of transverse mesocolon on the anterior surface of pancreas. This is the root of transverse colon. This is it. So you have to cut like this. Then transverse colon will be out. After the removal of the transverse colon, what is left now? How you make the diagram? This is the pancreas, anterior surface. This is number 3, number 4 layer. This is. have to show the cut end of the ascending colon and descending colon, and this is here is the retroperitoneally descending colon is lying. This is the root of transverse mesocolon. Both are on the anterior surface of pancreas. We have shown here also. Root of greater omentum, 2 roots, and root of transverse colon, again 2 lines. This number 3 is becoming number 4 layers, then same number 4, 4 and 4. 4 is forming the transverse mesocolon. Then we have to remove the S-shaped sigmoid colon. And sigmoid colon is also suspended from posterior abdominal wall with the help of sigmoid mesocolon. What was the shape? Inverted V shape. So if we want to remove the sigmoid colon, first cut is with the descending colon, second cut with the rectum, third cut is the root of V shape, inverted V shape, sigmoid mesocolon, then sigmoid colon is also in the tray. And what is the diagram after it? Left. So this is the diagram after the removal of sigmoid mesocolon. Is it clear? Inverted V is visible. So these two ends, what they show? From where we have cut with the scalpel. All these 2 lines, they are showing our cut of scalpel to remove the movable organs from the abdominal cavity. So this is the final diagram, what is called the horizontal tracing of the peritoneum after the removal of movable organs. All retroperitoneal organs, they are intact. They are as such. We have not displaced them. No need to them. So this is on the basis of this diagram, we will explain the peritoneal spaces. Now the peritoneal spaces broadly is divided into 2 parts, 2 regions, 2 categories. Number is called supracolic peritoneal spaces, and second is the infracolic. Supracolic, colic means transverse mesocolon, the root of transverse mesocolon is the base. All the spaces above it, these 2 lines is called supracolic space. All the spaces below this, they are infracolic peritoneal space. So we have to enumerate. The question is also asked, enumerate the supra and the infracolic peritoneal spaces. What spaces lies here? They are called supracolic. Number 1, subphrenic spaces. Sub means below, phrenic means diaphragm. So this is the diaphragm. So below the diaphragm, these spaces, they are called subphrenic. Now when you go into the D hall, you can put your hand between the liver and the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm and this is the liver. So there is a space is there. Your full hand and fingers, they can go here. So if you put here, your hand is in the right subphrenic space, because they are 2, right and left. So when you put your hand between diaphragm liver, you trace from right to left, go from right to left like this. A point will come where your hand is not going beyond on left side. Now what you are touching? Falciform ligament. Right layer. Similarly, if you put the hand here on the left lobe of the liver, this is the left subphrenic space. Again your fingers will be arrested here. You cannot go right. What this border of the hand is touching? Left leaf or the left layer of falciform ligament. This is how it is. Right and left subphrenic space. Then you can put your hand below the liver. Again below the liver there are spaces. This is called subhepatic. You will name it as subhepatic space. Subhepatic, there are also two, right and left. Both are very, very, very important spaces for clinical as well as for the examination point of view. Right subhepatic space is called Morison's pouch. Morison's pouch. Its second name is hepatorenal pouch. Hepatorenal pouch, or this space. Name says that hepato means liver and kidney, because here lies the right kidney. So space between the liver, below the liver and anterior to the right kidney, this space is called Morison's pouch or hepatorenal pouch. This is the most dependent part of the peritoneal space when patient is lying in the supine position. So from the anterior abdominal wall, where you are touching the right kidney and where the kidney is lying posteriorly, so it is the most deepest part. From anteriorly you are going deep back. So whenever patient is lying in the supine position, this is because of gravity, all the fluid will be collected in this pouch. So whenever we do the laparotomy, when we do the operation of any organ, after the operation some oozing of the blood and the serum comes out of that organ. And when patient, because of the pain, is lying on the bed, because of the pain he can't move, so whole of the fluid will be collected in the Morison's pouch. So that is the problem. So regarding whenever a question comes, Morison's pouch, number one is the boundaries: anteriorly, posteriorly, right, left boundary, superior, inferior. So under these headings you have to describe the boundary. Who is forming the anterior boundary? Anterior abdominal wall. What lies on the posterior boundary? Right kidney with suprarenal gland lying behind the retroperitoneum. Then what is on the right side? This is the right side. This is the space. This is my hand is in Morison's pouch. The right space on right side is also continuous with the right subphrenic space, and below it is continuous with the right paracolic gutter. This is again the space. Left side, my finger is going into foramen of Winslow. So left extent is lesser sac. That is left. So this is the right and left, anterior, posterior, right and left. Superiorly, superior, what I mean? Inferior surface of liver. And what particular lobe of the liver? That is, you have to the Q for quadrate lobe. Quadrangular shaped lobe of the liver forming the superior boundary. What is the inferior? If I touch the inferior boundary, finger touching transverse mesocolon. So simple. So if anybody can draw this diagram, he or she can explain the boundaries of the Morison's pouch. And applied anatomy, it is related, common with the lesser sac that we are doing next. So applied of the both are same. So you can write both of them. So this is how to attempt the question of Morison's pouch and to make the diagram. So this is the Morison's pouch, if you see. So both the diagram you have to make. Then left one, left subhepatic space is called lesser sac. Lesser sac, that we will go into detail next. So both these spaces, they are important. Then comes the third is the duodenal spaces. Duodenal spaces, that is also called paraduodenal and retroduodenal spaces. So they are related to the fourth part, the last part of the duodenum, which lies on the left side of the midline. Because this part of the duodenum has to continuous with the movable jejunum. This is called the duodenojejunal junction. So, first part, second part and third part, they are all retroperitoneal. But the fourth part is not retroperitoneal. It comes above the peritoneum and its length is only 1 inch. Because it has to continuous with the, what is called, jejunum. So jejunum is movable, so it is also movable. So some space are created parallel to the fourth part of duodenum. They are called the parallel to it, and retro means behind it. So that is the duodenum. Then comes the infracolic space. So below this root of the transverse mesocolon, all the spaces below, they are called the infracolic space. And there are two. One is this right triangular space. This is the left triangular space. Who is dividing? Root of mesentery dividing into right and left triangular spaces, infracolic. Plus, I can put my finger in between the abdominal wall and the ascending colon. Similarly, my fingertips can go in the body wall of the abdomen and the descending colon. So these two, they are called the right and left. Para means parallel, paracolic gutters. So infracolic, they are the right and left paracolic gutters. Then third is the right triangular space. Then fourth is left triangular space. Both are triangular, but with a difference. Right paracolic, the right triangular space is lying on the right side of the root of mesentery. Apex is downward towards the terminal ileum. The base is towards the root of the transverse mesocolon. So that is the boundary. And the left triangular space is opposite. Apex is lying in the splenic flexure, and base is on the pelvic cavity. So apex is different in the two spaces. Both are triangular, but apex and base is different. So that is how we do the right and left triangular spaces. So this is how you have to do the horizontal tracing whenever a question comes about the horizontal tracing. So after that, we have to now focus on the lesser sac. Now the lesser sac, as I have already told you, the boundaries. So boundaries of the lesser sac, they are anterior wall and posterior wall. Anterior wall of the lesser sac is formed by the posterior surface of liver, posterior surface of the lesser omentum, and posterior surface of stomach. They form the anterior wall of the lesser sac. The posterior wall is forming by the number 3 layer of the greater omentum, and the retroperitoneum covering the pancreas, left kidney, the gastrosplenic ligament, lienorenal ligament, and the diaphragmatic peritoneum. Then its opening is foramen of Winslow. The boundaries we have studied it. What lies posterior, anterior, superior, and inferior. Then it has got the recesses. This is the recess. This is called the superior recess of the lesser sac. This is the inferior recess. Between number 2, number 3 layer, almost glued together, but only in the children they are separated. So this is the superior recess, and this is the inferior recess of the lesser sac in the horizontal tracing. So you have to make 2 diagrams when the lesser sac question comes. Recess means, in the anatomy, recess means a small space. So when you were studying in the schools, there were what was there? Recess. How much it should be? 10 minutes or 10 hours? 10 hours. No, recess means a small duration of your enjoyment. Smallest possible in the schools. So in the anatomy also. Wherever the word recess means a small space, a minimal space, right or left, superior or the inferior. So that is the word meaning the recesses. The main important thing about the applied of the lesser sac, that is the most important part. After making the diagram, write down the boundaries of the lesser sac, then you have to discuss in full about the what is called the recess, that is the applied of the Morison's pouch and lesser sac. They are almost same. Number 1, internal hernia. Write down, it is not given in your book. And whole of the applied comes from questions, MCQ and everything will come from it. Internal hernia. Internal hernia means when you do the you have done the inguinal hernia, direct, indirect type, oblique and straight. Hernia means from inside to inside is called internal hernia. Sometimes what happens, any loop of the jejunum ileum, it will get into the foramen inflow. No doubt it is a very small foramen, slit-like opening. It only admits my tip of my little finger. It is 1.25 centimeter slit. But if the intestines they are empty, any loop of the intestine, it can go inside and get obstructed. It goes inside, but it cannot come out. And this constricted foramen of Winslow will press upon the veins of the intestine. And like the caput succedatum we have done in the scalp, these veins of the intestine will be dilated. And blood will come out, serum will come out of the blood. And intestine gets swell up. And because of the obstruction, the patient shows the signs of intestinal obstruction. What are the signs of the intestinal obstruction? When no food is going into peristaltic in the forward direction, it is coming back. What are the signs? Vomiting and the pain. So patient comes with the complaint of vomiting and the pain. And swelling in the epigastrium, because it lies behind the stomach. And stomach lies in the epigastrium. So stomach will be drifted anteriorly. So that is called internal hernia. So in the CT scan, when we confirm this diagnosis, what we do? Laparotomy. Patient has to be operated. We open the abdomen, see the dilated loops of the jejunum ileum and gauzed and encaloped into the lesser sac. If we try to pull it out, it is not coming because they are swelled up now. Through the 1.25 centimeter, it cannot come. So in the operation theater, there is a instrument that is called the intestinal decompressor. So we put the decompressor. So anterior wall of the lesser sac is very fragile. It's almost broken. Intestine, they are open in front of our view. Because I have said the peritoneum is much thinner than the balloon we have seen. Why? Because it is made up of single layer of the mesenchymal cell. Single layer. So it is already soft. So dilated loops, they are coming out. And we put the decompressor, the intestine becomes shrink. And we easily pull out. Before they undergo obstruction and they undergo gangrene. Like here also. Omentocele, enterocele, vesicocele, and depending upon the content of the hernia, we name the inguinal hernia also. Whether greater omentum is coming, it is called omentocele. If intestine is coming, it is called enterocele. If urinary bladder is coming through the deep ring or superficial, it is called vesicocele. So here is also intestine is there. If they are black color, if they are gangrenous, we cut them out and throw them. And then we do the end-to-end anastomosis, the healthy one. So that is how we. So this is how to write down one page of whenever a question of the applied of the lesser sac come. That I have said you. Internal hernia and how to diagnose and treat it. And what are the signs and symptoms of the patient coming to a doctor. Second, most important is the perforation of gastric ulcer. Posterior wall, underline it. Posterior wall. If a patient come with a gastric ulcer and not in the anterior wall, it is perforated in the posterior wall. Ulcers are very, very common in the stomach because of the high HCl in some people and consumption of the spicy food. These people are prone to the gastric ulcer. And if there is a hole on the stomach, the acidic chyme will and the food you have taken will come effect. It start coming out of the posterior wall of the stomach and start collecting in the lesser sac, and what will happen? The HCl is irritated. If you put a 1 drop of acid here, your skin will burn. Same is here. The peritoneum lining the sac will be irritated, and irritation is called peritonitis. So patient will suffer from peritonitis. So what will happen in the epigastrium? Pain, swelling, redness and hot. So patient will come with the pain in the epigastrium. As the stomach is lying over here, patient will have got this. So peritoneum peritonitis will be there. Then what is the treatment? When this whole of the lesser sac is filled with the acidic chyme and the pus and the bacteria also, recesses they are also full. Now the same gastric content start leaking in the greater sac. Patient is painful, patient is lying in the bed at home or at hospital, and whole of this material is coming out of the foramen of Winslow into the whole of the cavity. Now the second problem starts. Now whole of the peritoneum will be irritated. Whole of the greater sac, peritoneum is involved. And what is the condition called? Generalized peritonitis. So first it was local peritonitis, only localized to the lesser sac peritoneum. But now after the leakage or passage of the time, if the patient is coming late, now it leads to the what is called generalized peritonitis. Generalized peritonitis. And generalized peritonitis is a life-threatening condition. Patient may die. Laparotomy has to be done as early as possible before the patient goes into septicemia or inoperable and unable to operate. What are the signs of the generalized peritonitis? Number 1, distension of the abdomen. Abdomen of the patient is distended with the air and the fluid inside because the leak is there. Because food, when we take in the stomach, air and the stomach is now interconnected. Air is now freely going into the lesser sac, into our body through the mouth. So distension is there. And due to the perforation, this air becomes open in the abdomen. And whenever we take the X-ray of the standing view, plain X-ray of the abdomen of the standing view of the patient, what we find? The air under right dome of the diaphragm. As you see in the X-ray chest, air is black color in the X-ray. So a black spot is seen. That is diagnostic of the perforation of any of the hollow viscera of the abdomen. Maybe jejunum, maybe colon, maybe stomach or duodenum. So whenever there is a hole in any of these food pipe, the air, because of the lightness, will come up and will be arrested under the right dome of the diaphragm. Presence of the air in the fundus below the left dome of the diaphragm is a normal finding, because air is present in the stomach all the time. This is a normal finding in the X-ray. But on the right side, it is an abnormal thing. It shows the perforation of the any viscera that we have to look for after investigation, other investigation. First, we only take the plain X-ray in the standing view, not in the lying down, standing of the abdomen, then the air will go up. Distension. Number 2, board-like rigidity. Board-like rigidity. The another sign of generalized peritonitis. What is board-like rigidity? Usually our abdomen is soft. But if you see a patient of this perforation, if you touch the abdomen, anterior abdominal wall, it will be like this. Hard board, plyboard-like. Hard. They are board-like rigidity. How it is produced? Because the acidic chyme is coming in the parietal peritoneum. And what lies anterior to the parietal peritoneum? Anterior abdominal muscles. All muscles are present, we have done. So irritation of the peritoneum, parietal peritoneum will cause the irritation of the muscles because they are all together. Peritoneum is very thin. So same irritation will reach the muscles. And how the muscles show their irritation? They undergo spasm. What is spasm? Sustained state of muscle contraction we have done in the muscles of mastication, tetanus, rhesus sardonicus, platysma we have done in the posterior triangle if you remember. So anterior abdominal muscles, they undergo spasm, and this is called the hardness or the board like it is. Third finding of the patient, a doctor will look, is the silent abdomen. Usually in the abdomen, if you put the stethoscope, after 3 or 4 minutes there will be sound of the peristalsis in our abdomen. You might have heard also sometime when we are lying down quiet in the room. So these are the normal peristaltic sound. They are called borborygmi rhythm. Borborygmi. Borborygmi rhythm. After interval of so many peristaltic movements are there. But now they are absent in the patient when comes for the, you put this as well. Why? Because of the irritation of the acidic chyme, the jejunum ileum muscle, they undergo paralysis. No peristalsis is there. Food stasis is there. Patient shows the signs of intestinal obstruction. That is the vomiting and absolute constipation. Even the no wind is passing. That is called absolute constipation, and vomiting is the signs of intestinal obstruction. So that the patient should. Then paralytic ileus. Paralytic ileus. All of the intestine, large and small, undergo paralysis of the smooth muscles of the intestine. Intestine, they are lying sluggishly. No movement is. Then ascites. Ascites means fluid in the general abdominal cavity or peritoneal cavity. Fluid is there. So distension may be also because of the fluid inside the abdominal cavity. From where the fluid comes? Again because of the irritation of the peritoneum. You might have noticed whenever you got the ulcers in your lips or the ulcers in your tongue, salivation increases. This salivation is a normal defense of the human body to minimize the irritation of the open ulcers. Same is here. There are so many ulcers present in the peritoneum. To minimize it, there is a more fluid production by the semi-permeable membrane, that is peritoneum, which is also used for renal dialysis, if you know. So that is called the ascitic. This condition is called the ascites. So whenever we go the CT scan, what we see? That there is a lot of ascitic fluid is present. The CT scan will confirm the minimal or the maximal ascites fluid, how many liters are there. So whenever a patient shows these signs, it means patient suffering from intestinal obstruction and generalized peritonitis. Patient may die because of any of these reasons. Next applied of this is the acute pancreatitis. Acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis. As you know, pancreatitis means hot swelling and pain. So pancreas lies just behind the posterior wall. It is becoming swell up. It occupies the lesser sac, and pancreatic juices which are made for the digestion of the food is now coming out of its surface. Most deadly and the devastating enzyme in the pancreatic juice is the trypsin and chymo. It is proteolytic enzyme. And whole of the human cells, they are made up of, cell membrane of the human body cell is made up of lipoprotein. So all these cells of the intestine, all these cells forming the walls of the aorta, inferior vena cava, even the pancreas itself, every human cell is present everywhere. So this enzyme will attack on these cells. It will destroy them. There will be multiple holes in the aorta, multiple holes in the inferior vena cava, because all the muscles, rectus, psoas major, all are having holes, and blood is oozing out as the fountains. Whole of the pancreas becomes pulpy. All the intestine, jejunum, having multiple holes, food is coming out and collecting in the general peritoneal abdominal cavity. So when we do the laparotomy, when we open the abdomen, see there is a broth of the blood and small pieces of the intestine, they are floating. We close it. Patient 99.9 mortality. You can't save. This is called acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis. And most common cause of this pancreatitis is alcohol. So it is also called alcoholic pancreatitis. Number one dread effect of the alcohol is patient come with the pancreatitis. So that is how you have to write down what is acute pancreatitis. Then fourth is acute appendicitis. In the acute appendicitis, patient has got the appendicitis, but very, very sensitive patients, they do not go to a doctor. They are lying comfortably at home, not consulting any doctor. Any pus from the appendix will be collected into the right paracolic gutter, then it is collected into Morrison's pouch. From Morrison's pouch, it is collecting in the lesser sac. Patient is lying in the bed at home. Then the epigastrium starts swelling because of the collection from this. So pain from the now right side is shifted to the epigastrium because it is now having the swelling. And when the patient reaches the doctor after 7 days, the epigastrium is full of pus and patient is unfit for surgery. So prognosis is very bad. So that's why the appendix operation, whenever there is a pain in appendix, patient has to reach on the operation table as soon as possible. This is the dire emergency after myocardial infarction is the appendicitis in the human body. Patient has to be operated. Surgery is the only answer to the acute appendicitis. Then is the pseudopancreatic cyst. Pseudopancreatic cyst. Pseudopancreatic cyst is this. This is called localized peritonitis. Post-operative. So after the operation, whichever organ we operate, appendix or any organ in the abdomen, there will be oozing of some serum and blood after the operation. And whole of this blood will be collected into the Morrison's pouch. From Morrison's pouch, it will be collected into the lesser sac. And in the lesser sac, when it goes, there will be problem. So this is the reason why after the operation, we ask the patient to sit as early as possible in the bed, and patient should walk as soon as possible. He or she has to bear the pain with the painkillers or something. More early he or she will sit in the bed after 20 hours of the operation, and more she is walking in the room with keeping the operated side with the support of the hand or the abdominal binder, more quick is the recovery. Why? Because to evacuate the infected material in the lesser sac and the Morrison's pouch. Because when the patient is sitting in the 45-degree angle after the operation, then what will happen? Because of the gravity from Morrison pouch and lesser sac, fluid will be coming into the pelvis. The pelvic peritoneum has got a very large area. It is used for renal dialysis because it is a semi-permeable membrane. So whole of the infected material coming in the pelvic cavity will be reabsorbed and will be making the patient disease free as early as possible. So patient has recommended after 12 hours to sit comfortably at 45 degree in the bed. And in the evening, patient has to be ambulatory. Patient has to stand and walk in the room. Why we recommend it? So that whole of the fluid from Morrison's pouch and the lesser sac should come into the pelvic cavity, which make the reflux. More is the lying down of the patient post-operative will increase the days of admission in the and bill also in the hospital. More early is the ambulation, more early is the sitting, more early will be the discharge from the hospital. The anatomy tells why it is so. So see how to elaborate these 5 findings of the Morrison's pouch as well as the upright of the lesser sac. That's all.